Good afternoon and welcome to Second City Sports Zoom style.
Zoom.
Ooh, style.
I am Jay Pfeiffer, and you can follow me at Truth and Reason underscore on the Twitter. You can also follow the show's Twitter handle at 2NDCSCHI. And of course, we've got Lakina and Lamont joining us so far. So, what's going on, folks?
What's
Hey,
up? What's up? Got a lot to talk about today.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. We're going to wrap up some basketball talk. Of course, there has been an NBA champion crowned. And if you've been living under a rock, you should know that it's the Lakers. So we'll get into that and how they were able to wrap up the series and what's next for the Miami Heat. We've also got some compelling series in baseball playoffs. We got Game 5 tonight between Houston and Tampa Bay. And we've got, I believe that's that's Game 6 in the American League.
Yeah.
Game 5 is tonight between the Dodgers and the Braves. And the Braves looking to close that out. So hopefully we'll get into that. And looks like we've got Sydney joining us. What's going on, Sydney?
what's good, my people? What's good? What's good? What's good? Happy weekend.
Yes,
All
sir.
right.
All right,
And it gets
everybody, introduce
cold.
yourselves. Where can they follow you?
Okay, I'm Lakina McGee. You can follow me at Keena McGee on Twitter, at Keena_McGee on the Instagram.
I'm Lamont Scott. You can follow me at Lamont Scott on Facebook, Lamont Scott 69 on Instagram, and Lamont Scott 16 on Twitter.
You can follow yours truly on Twitter and Instagram at SidKid80. Once again, at SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80. And you can follow the show, Second City Sports. It's part of our We Are Regal Radio programming, War Media at War on Anchor, which kicks you over to Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, wherever you download your podcast. Make sure you download War on Anchor. We are also on iHeartRadio. Please, please, please download the iHeartRadio app. When you do, type in your search engine box, War on Anchor. That's WARR on Anchor. And we're also on YouTube at War Media. That's WARR Media. Type that in your search engine box on YouTube. You see our lovely faces like you are watching right now.
All right. So some interesting things happening in the where you guys want to start first? We got the MLB, we got basketball, we can finish that up. There's also some coaching things happening. And I guess we'll start with the basketball too, since Jason, you weren't on with us when the Lakers officially clinched. What did you think about the series, and can the Lakers sort of, start off a new dynasty?
No.
Well, listen, I give you guys knew how I felt about this series coming in before it started. I didn't think it was actually going to be as competitive as it was. I give Miami a ton of credit. Obviously, more specifically, Jimmy Butler. I give Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat a ton of credit just for getting that extra game because, like you guys, you knew my thoughts on this. I thought it was either going to be a sweep or a 5-game series. So for Miami to get it to 6, although they did get blown out in that Game 6, I give them a ton of credit for that. You guys know how I felt about sort of these playoffs and Lakers. I know LeBron, of course, he had his signature triple-double to close out the series in Game 6. Of course, that's what he does. I'm not trying to take credit away from him, but you guys knew how I felt about this narrative as well. He's a great, great player, but he is not the most important player on that team. I don't think the Lakers get past the second round without Anthony Davis. That's just my opinion. I could be totally wrong. I'm not a basketball expert, folks. So
He's pretty smart.
My opinion on that. But of course, he gets the triple-double to close it out and gets the Finals MVP. Now, the greatest of all time discussion comes up, which I still think is a dead issue. I don't get into the reasons why this is a dead issue, but you guys know how I feel about this. This is not even close to me. He'll be one of the greats. His story is still need to be written. He's got a few more years left. We'll see where he ends up. But, again, congratulations to the Lakers, 17th championship, tying the Boston Celtics for most in the NBA, in NBA history. And we'll see where they go from here. They've got some questions to answer. Anthony Davis will probably re-sign, even though he's a free agent. Rondo, I believe, opted out of his contract, though. So I think that's a loss for them for that bench and that second unit. So we'll see where the Lakers go from here.
Okay.
Also, too, will the Lakers consider trading Danny Green, even though he has a player option for this offseason, because he was basically a miss this year. And he had his moments, but he did better in Toronto last year than he did this year with the Lakers. Also, too, Dwight Howard is a free agent, I know some of the games during the playoffs he played very little to none at all, and it depended on the matchups for the other teams. And also too, like you mentioned, Jason Rondo, he has options should the Lakers not bring him back. And the NBA is going to face what the other three major sports are going to face is the flexibility or lack of flexibility in salary cap due to this pandemic that we're in right now. So the players think whoever free agents think they were going to get a quote unquote big payday, that's going to have to be put on hold. You're going to get a whole lot less. It depends on how much that you're looking for. This Lakers team is going to look different next year. How different, we don't know. But I'll tell you what, guys, the competition is going to get much tougher. We saw what Denver did this year in the bubble. We saw what Utah did in the bubble this year. The Clippers, we'll get into them in a minute, but they have changes on their coaching staff. Also, too, the Golden State Warriors, presuming that all their superstars are healthy, they're going to give it another run or two. It depends on who they pick up in the draft as well. Are they a contending team as far as championships? I'm not sure. I think they're definitely a playoff team, but we'll see what happens with that. And also, too, let's look at the whole Western Conference. Houston is going to have a new coach, maybe a new roster as well. So if people think that the Lakers are going to have a cakewalk to the title next year, even though you have LeBron James at his advanced age, the way he's playing, you're kidding yourself.
I gotta agree with Jason. That team, if it stay together, which it doesn't look like a piece of it is gonna stay. I mean, LeBron, yeah, if he stays, I think he's gonna be the only one still left. AD, they say it's impossible for him to come back home, but I don't think it's impossible, man. And a lot of people, I mean, this might have been it for LeBron. I think this might have been LeBron's his last go round as a champion. I mean, he got something left in the tank, but he shouldn't have been that MVP of that one. That Anthony Davis was the MVP. And, that might rub him the wrong way also. I mean, that's why I'm looking forward to talking to people that's from LA, a couple of our colleagues from LA, just to see where their heads at on that whole situation. So, again, congratulations to him. But like you mentioned, Sid, with these coaching changes, I mean, Houston has to make roster changes, especially with the coach they're bringing in. So I don't think the coach they're bringing in runs anything sort of an offense like the players that they have in their system right now. So I know that coach will not play without a center. So, it remains to be seen what they're going to do.
It's going to be hard for the Lakers to kind of get back to back. Sort of like start off that new kind of mini dynasty. Like you guys all said, I mean, you got the Warriors, the Clippers, and their new head coach. We'll get to him in a little bit. Denver's still going to be around. Dallas is still going to be around. We'll see where OKC is. The Blazers might still be around. So you still got a lot of teams in the West that are going to be right there. And we'll see where Phoenix is. So it's going to be very interesting to see where this goes with the West, because there are going to be a lot of changes both with personnel and coaching. So it's going to be very hard. Now, I'm not going to, totally write the Lakers off, but I'm not going to be one of those people that say it's going to be a cakewalk for them. I just don't think it's going to happen.
And don't forget about a team like the New Orleans Pelicans. I mean, we named a lot of teams in the West. The West is loaded. We know this already, guys. But a team like New Orleans, young, hungry, really good, right? The Dallas Mavericks, you know how I feel about Luka Doncic, Lakina. Young still and hungry. I think they could be a top 5 or 4 seed next year. I really believe that. The Clippers, they're probably going to fall off a little bit, but obviously still going to be competitive, right? You still got Denver. You still got Utah. Oklahoma City may take a step or two back, right? Maybe. Houston maybe take a step back or two. But if you guys are thinking, if anybody out there, I know you guys wouldn't be thinking this, but if anybody out there in the landscape, in the burst, is thinking that the Golden State Warriors are still not a championship caliber team, they are fooling themselves. They're going to be back. They're going to be healthy. That is going to be key. And they're going to be hungry again, too. They don't like how the last couple of years ended. So if you think Klay Thompson and Steph Curry and Draymond Green are going to be focused next year, you're mistaken.
And mad, Jason. They're going to be oh, you're going to just disrespect us? You're going to forget we are here? Yeah. Man, them people going to hurt some people. They got some young people coming in. them people gonna be dangerous next year. That's that other team. Like OKC will fall out maybe, but you're gonna have that Phoenix team. You're gonna have Phoenix and Golden State, and as you mentioned, Dallas. Them people Dallas gonna have something to say. That Dallas and Golden State, I'm looking so forward. And New Orleans, as you mentioned, who I've always watched in the back of my head, even when they was complete garbage, because they're New Orleans. But at the same time, all of them teams gonna have something to say. And I don't see the Lakers doing anything much, like I say, if AD stay. I mean, he should have got that MVP, and he didn't. So, he might come home. Why not?
That's not happening. I think Davis will say he'll probably do 1 year deal so he can keep opting out and probably get even more money. So for anybody that says, oh, well, you might come back to Chicago.
But they might
that's not happening.
The Lakers around him. Now, if they change it and build the Lakers around him, that may be a change that'll keep him in LA forever.
Yeah. It'll be interesting, though. Tyronn Lue now looks like he's going to be the new coach of the Clippers. What do you guys think of that move?
Can I start?
Go ahead.
I mean, and this is just my opinion. I think players of a certain stature have an issue being coached by players who they felt wasn't as good as them. Now, they may can take it from a guy who never played the game, but really, really smart. But when you bring in coaches and you have players who that coach wasn't necessarily better than on the court, I think in the back of their head, they got little issues with that. So I don't really see how Tyronn Lue gonna be successful trying to coach a Kawhi Leonard and a Paul George. He may not have problems out of both of them, but one of them who may not be as good as what people say he is in the playoffs may have an issue or an attitude going forward with a coach such as that. But it remains to be seen. I don't think it's gonna work, just like what they doing in Houston. I don't think it's gonna work with that coach.
Well, if people thought that the Clippers had pressure on them this year as an organization, pressure is going to be on them even more next year, because after next year, both Kawhi Leonard and Paul George can opt out of their contracts which they signed for before the start of this past season. Tyronn Lue has the respect of the players, yes, but like you said, Lamont, it all comes down to what they do in the playoffs. I'm talking about the whole roster. I believe Montrezl Harrell is a free agent this offseason,
yep.
So I'm going to see how much does it take to bring him back. It looks like they're going to have just about the same team. I know Chauncey Billups, who did TV for ESPN and the Clippers this past season. Now he's the lead assistant. I know he was up for the Indiana Pacers head job, but he's not going to get it now. But he's going to be on Tyronn Lue's staff. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Clippers do for 2021. You can't blame Lob City anymore. You traded away Blake Griffin. You got rid of Chris Paul. You got rid of DeAndre Jordan. Of course, Doc Rivers took the blame for this past season's collapse in the playoffs. So Steve Ballmer, the owner, it's all on you now.
Yeah, I personally think, again, like I said, the Clippers may take a step back. I know Tyronn Lue is had taken some time away from coaching. Again, they're still talented. I think they're still going to be there. But excuse me, you guys also know how I feel about Paul George. If he's on that team, they're not going to go anywhere.
They do.
No, gosh.
Yeah, no, we'll see. But listen, I love Tyronn Lue. I think he's going to probably have the players more accountable than they were under Doc Rivers. I'm finding that hard to believe, but there wasn't really a whole lot of accountability with that LA Clippers team. They just seemed to sort of waltz through the season, as we all had noticed, even before the shutdown. So we'll see what happens with Tyronn Lue. But I think it's a pretty good hire.
Yeah, I agree. I think, look, he has a little bit of experience now, so he'll know how to coach and kind of, keep that team in line. So I'm not worried about him and what's gonna happen. I mean, he's got championships both as a player as a coach now under his belt. So I'm not worried about what he's gonna do for the Clippers. I think if anything, they may actually listen to him. So who knows? And he'll actually hold those guys accountable. I know because Doc kind of took the brunt of it. But Lou's sort of like the kind of guy that will kind of, call his guys out when he needs to. So that'll be interesting. Rockets, it looks like Jeff Van Gundy, the latest rumors are that Jeff Van Gundy might be the front runner or at least a finalist. And now apparently he wants Mark Jackson to come in and coach with him to be one of his top assistants. What do you guys think about that move, potentially?
Well, Mark Jackson cannot be quote unquote blackballed anymore if that happens, correct?
Right.
At least he's got a foot in the door.
Yeah.
I don't think he's foot in the door.
Yeah, I thought it was a crime that he was blackballed in the first place, Sid. But I guess that was what was going on. But listen, selfishly, I wouldn't want it because of the broadcast. They do so well on the ESPN broadcast, but they obviously have a personal chemistry going on, right, folks? So I mean, if they can make that work there, I don't see why not. I think it could be something at least worth looking at, don't you?
I think so. Like you mentioned, Jason, they had good chemistry on the air. Hopefully, they can work out with the type of roster that they could have for Houston. Let's be honest, too, Mark Jackson. This is fair or unfair. This is the time for him to quote unquote rebuild his image. The reason why he didn't continue coaching at Golden State because he tried to build that Pat Riley mentality atmosphere as us against them. Of course, there was some other things that went on too. People can look that up for themselves, but. He did play for Pat Riley in the Pat Riley's first year in New York back in the 91-92 season. And of course, Pat Riley traded him to the Clippers following that season. So he tried to adopt that mentality in with Golden State, and upper management just wasn't happening. But the players loved it. So and Klay Thompson, Steph Curry, and Draymond Green all speak highly of him. So he did something right. He got that franchise to 50 wins before Steve Kerr took it over, and of course led them to those 3 world championships. So should Jeff Van Gundy get that job and Mark Jackson get that lead assistant job, this is for Mark Jackson to rebuild his image. Now, will it guarantee him another head coaching spot? We shall see, but it will be nice for him to get his foot back in the door as far as coaching is concerned.
You know, there might be a situation here, like Jason mentioned with their chemistry. It may be a situation of Van Gundy knowing that he can get his foot in and he can bring Mark along, and then he can step away and maybe leave it with Mark and allow Mark to be back in. I mean, that's the only way I think Mark can get back in. But, I mean, like Jason said, he shouldn't have been out in the first place, especially this long. But, it remains to be seen. I mean, like you said, I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with it if he can get back in there.
All right, joining us right now, he's the sports entertainment reporter for Nitefall Media, which you can hear on iHeartRadio. Just download the iHeartRadio app. And also, he's been seen on Fox Sports, NBC Sports, and ESPN. And you can also hear him as a guest analyst on Fred Rogan and Rodney Pete's afternoon show on AM 570 LA Sports every Thursday once Dodgers baseball is concluded. And you can see him on NBC4's Going Rogan with Fred Rogan, the TV show on Sunday nights on NBC4, KNBC TV in Los Angeles. And we're waiting for Nick Hamilton to join us as he gets his audio together. You can follow him on social media and on Twitter and Instagram at Nick Hamilton LA. Once again, at Nick Hamilton LA. Nick, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey, man. How you guys doing? Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. I apologize for the tardiness.
No, you're fine. First off, the Dodgers are on the brink of elimination. I'm seeing Dodgers Twitter already kind of freaking out. So what's the mood over there in LA, Nick?
The nerves are absolutely, on par because this team was so loaded and so talented when we started the season in 2020. I think when you look at what has transpired in the last several years with them going to the World Series a few times and coming up short and didn't have the issue was the bullpen at one point. The issue was we didn't have enough hitting at some points. The issue was the starting rotation sometimes. But now it seemed that this year we had the most balanced team when it came to hitting, when it came to the pitching, when it came to certain things that, it's just something that really we really felt, LA really felt like it had an opportunity, especially with the 60-game season, with the shortened season.
Did we lose him?
60-game season, I'm sorry. You really had a great opportunity to capitalize on getting a World Series and getting to the World Series again. But not only that, but winning the World Series because you had a Mookie Betts, who was an AL MVP, who's probably going to be the National League MVP this year because of the numbers that he put up. You look at what Cody Bellinger is coming off the year that he had last season. Corey Seager, you had Kershaw, you have, Walker Buehler, who's now the ace of the Dodgers, Julio Urias, who's a young up-and-coming pitcher. And then you had David Price before he decided to opt out due to COVID and his concerns with COVID-19 and his family. So you looked at on paper, you was like, okay, this is a premier Dodger roster. This is a roster that could possibly get it done. And unfortunately, they can't get it done. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a mental thing. The roster is pretty tight. They're pretty set. So I think Dave Roberts is a really good baseball manager. But I tend to think sometimes analytics supersede, the eye test and the gut test. And sometimes, every team in baseball uses analytics to some degree. You look at the Houston Astros, they use analytics, but also they know when to put the analytics back in the box, and they use the eye test and the gut test to make sure they adjust their lineups accordingly. And I think that's been the Dodgers, to me, the Achilles heels, that they rely too heavily on analytics and not enough balance when it comes to the eye test and the gut test. Because I think the Dodgers are a great organization. I think they're very smart minds inside that organization, starting with the ownership with the Guggenheim partners and Magic Johnson, down to Stan Kasten, down to Andrew Freeman, who I think is an incredible baseball mind. But also, too, numbers can't dictate what happens on the field. That happens with the players. That happens with management seeing certain things that sometimes players can't see. This is why Dusty Baker has been successful at the level that he's been, even though he's brought 5 different teams to the playoffs, which has never happened ever for a manager to do. When you look at what the Atlanta Braves are doing right now with Freddie Freeman, who I call a modern-day Chipper Jones. He gets in, he handles his business, he gets on base, he gets the hits or knocks people in, puts people in position to score when he's on base. So, Acuna has been, and Acuna's only signed a 1-year deal. So the numbers that he's racking up, he's due for a big payday, especially if the Braves go ahead and knock the Dodgers out of this series and move on to the World Series. That's going to be big for him. It's going to be big for the Braves. So it's not just a 3-1 lead that the Braves had. It's a mental 3-1 lead, which can be a little bit more detrimental because if you break somebody's spirit, we've all seen teams when their spirit gets broken, they pretty much check out. And I'm not saying the Dodgers have checked out, but I will say that this Braves team was underestimated. This Braves team was not respected fully by the nation. Everybody picked the Dodgers in either 6 or 7 games because we saw what the Dodgers did. I know you shaking your head, Jason, but most of America picked the Dodgers.
Yeah, okay.
Let's tell the truth.
I would agree with that, but not
okay. All right. Maybe you didn't pick them.
Why, but I agree with you on that.
Maybe you didn't pick them, and I understand. But most of America, if you look at all the networks and everybody, right, they picked the Dodgers because what they saw on paper.
Right.
And that's exactly what they did. So, listen, we all underestimated the Braves to a degree because we didn't know the type of camaraderie and the chemistry that they've had that propelled them. We know they got, the Dodgers opened up a fresh can of whoop ass on the other night and destroyed them. But I said the Braves took a night off. It's 7 straight games of baseball. You're going to have one of those nights. It's grueling. But then the Braves came back and stomped a mud hole in them and walked it dry. So that's why they're the 3-1 lead. It's not so much the Dodgers starters. It's the middle relief and the relievers that have been the problem for the Dodgers. Because if you notice the Braves have scored in late from the 6th inning on, the Braves have been able to score and put runners in scoring position. That's due to the bullpen. Because if you look at Walker Buehler, he gave up a home run early to Freddie Freeman, but then Kike Hernandez came back with the offense in the 5th to tie it up. And that game was tied up until about the 7th inning, about the 9th inning, I'm sorry. And then you saw they open up a fresh can of whoop ass. The same thing happened on Thursday night. The game was tied 1-1. Then all of a sudden, later on in the innings, that's when the Braves got an offensive onslaught and started scoring. So it's the Dodgers' problem has been the middle relief to the bullpen, to the relievers. That's been their problem. That's been their absolute problem.
Yeah, so I guess that's where I'll bring it in, Nick. So yeah, the rest of the group knows how I feel about the Dodgers. I felt this way for a few years now. They just haven't been able to get it done in the playoffs. I won't harp on that part, but I kind of want to focus on you mentioned him just a few minutes ago. Walker Buehler. He's been good, but he hasn't been as efficient. You know, he's had to throw a lot of pitches to get through some of his outings, especially in the playoffs. I mean, obviously, it may not matter in these playoffs, but going forward, how do you think he can sort of rectify that problem?
Well, I think Walker has been dealing with the blister issue. Now he has 2 blisters that we found out about. So I think that's giving him some problem with his command. At times, his ability to throw the slider, to throw his normal pitches that he would normally throw. I mean, he threw 100 pitches in his first game, which was a lot given the fact of how many innings he had to get through. And again, he maintained, he gave up the 1 run, but he was able to get back into his rhythm and really find his rhythm, I should say, moving forward. And like I said, Kike came back and gave them the offensive lift that they needed. So they had the game tied 1-1. So I think Walker Buehler, he hasn't been the sharpest Walker Buehler that we're accustomed to seeing, but he's battling through when it comes to just having, dealing with the blister issues, which, if you dealt with blisters, man, if you on those fingers and you're used to having those fingers come through for you, it's a bit of a stretch. It's no different than an ankle injury for a basketball player or, a quarterback who's dealing with shoulder issues or elbow issues. It's the same way. Whether they're, 80% or 60%, they're still going to get out there, but they're not going to be as effective as if they were 100%. And I think that's the problem with Walker Buehler. But I think Walker Buehler is an outstanding pitcher. I think he's only going to get better with age. If he can stay healthy, he's going to be a premier pitcher in this league at some point.
Lamont?
Nick, question. Now, if the Dodgers were to get past this next game, what do you think, other than stirring up that middle relief, as you were saying, they need to do to get them to that point? Because I was on board with Jason to a certain extent with the Dodgers having to show me something, and I felt Mookie Betts was the answer to that. So now that they fighting for their life, so to speak, if they get past this next game, what do you think they need to do to get a grasp on it and maybe fulfill what a lot of people thought they could fulfill by getting to this World Series and possibly even winning it?
Well, first of all, Mookie's got to start hitting on a consistent basis. The struggle is real. He's been struggling, and even he's mentioned about it. He's not happy about it, obviously, because he wants to be able to perform and make sure he contributes to the guys in the locker room. And so I think that's one factor. I think you have to make sure that your starting pitching is healthy enough to get through. We know Kershaw's had back issues where he was scratched from an original start. Even though he pitched pretty well on Thursday night, it wasn't the Kershaw that we were accustomed to seeing. So you got to make sure your starters are right. But, Friday night is Dustin May. It's all up to Dustin May. And that's a lot of pressure to put on a young guy in that position and say, hey, you got to be able to pitch well. But it's also even more pressure on the offense to come through, because the offense hasn't really been clicking the way outside of that one game when they destroyed them 900 to nothing, basically. Yeah. The offense has got to start clicking. The offense has got to start putting themselves with, and be able to hit with runners in scoring position. If you have a Cody Bellinger, you have a Corey Seager, you have a Jock Peterson, you have a Mookie Betts, these guys can hit the ball, but they have to be consistent. They have to be strategic enough to be able to say, okay, listen, we've got to, make sure that we hit in the lineup order that we're hitting in. Not only that, Dave Roberts has got to make sure that he's well aware of what's going on in the latter part of the game as well, from the 6th inning on. Maybe you have to start interchanging guys out of the lineup, maybe pinch hitting later on in the lineup, or maybe having a pinch runner and saying, okay, hey, man, you sit down. I'm going to put this pinch runner in to try to steal a base, especially if you're down by a run or so and you have one out in the top of the 8th. You have a chance to at least tie the game where you can send it into extras, and then it's a crapshoot after the extras because anybody could win at that point. So you have to make sure that you put yourselves in position to at least, if not take the lead, at least tie the game up if you're trailing. in order for you to have a significant opportunity to win this game, because now the pressure is absolutely on the Dodgers. And that's a lot of pressure to have. You have to win every single game. I know teams have blown 3-1 leads, the Clippers, but I know also there have been teams that have been able to take care of 3-1 leads, and maybe they won the series 4-2. So they did allow that extra game to come in. We saw that with the Lakers and the Heat in the NBA Finals. But they were able to take care of their business. And I think if you look at the Atlanta Braves and you look at what they're doing, they're on a mission. They're focused on getting to the World Series, but they're not going to look so far ahead where they overlook this game against Dustin May and the Dodgers on Friday night.
Nick Hamilton of Nitefall Media is joining us here on Second City Sports, along with Lakina McGee, Jason Pfeiffer, and Lamont Scott. I am Sidney Brown. Speaking of those Clippers, Nick, let's talk about Clippers basketball right now. Tyronn Lue has been named the new head coach for that squad. Chauncey Billups moves from the TV booth to his lead assistant. It looks like it's going to be the same team that's going to be brought back next season for 2021, with the exception, as of right now, of Montrezl Harrell, who's currently a free agent. What do you expect from Mr. Lue in 2021? And assuming that things go according to plan, as you mentioned, the Clippers not having great history in the playoffs, do you expect Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, they can opt out of their contracts following next season?
Well, to answer your first question, I don't expect too much. I think Tyronn Lue is nothing but a retread. He's a remix of Doc Rivers. I mean, he was the chair next to Doc Rivers the entire couple of seasons that he's been there. I didn't think that was a great hire, but what choice did the Clippers have, really? They weren't going to do what they should have done, which was hire Mark Jackson, who I thought would have been an incredible hire. But currently he's blackballed for reasons that I won't discuss. But I thought that would have been a much better hire. But Tyronn Lue, they gave him 5 years. Congratulations to Tyronn Lue. I don't begrudge him for taking the deal. I mean, what is he supposed to do? Turn it down when nobody else is really offering him a deal? He was still going through the interview processes for other teams that were in contention for his services. So, congratulations to him. As far as Kawhi Leonard and Paul George goes, if Paul George ends up remaining in Los Angeles next season, with Kawhi Leonard, I think you're going to get much of the same. But there's dissension in that locker room. There are guys that don't like the fact that Kawhi Leonard takes load management. He's being treated as the superstar that Kawhi Leonard is. And and until they get rid of that I don't want to say so much jealousy, but just that type of thinking. This is your teammate. You knew this coming in, what Kawhi Leonard did. This ain't nothing new. Whether it's Patrick Beverley saying something, or whether it was Montrezl Harrell, sneak dissing, or whether it was anybody else, you knew exactly what you were getting when you got Kawhi Leonard. Did you not follow with him in San Antonio? Did you not follow him in Toronto? Did you not pay attention? Did you not pay attention to what transpired, coming over to the Clippers and what the Clippers agreed to allowing him to do? And I think the Clippers are, again, another incredibly smart organization. They have a great front office with Lawrence Frank, and with Jerry West being the consultant. You see why Lawrence Frank was named Executive of the Year, but it's also that entire staff and upper management, because I think they are incredibly smart when it comes to basketball. But sometimes that can be too much. And what I mean by that is it's a fine line between genius and insanity. And sometimes you can stack the deck too much to where the overflow is worse than just not having enough. And I think sometimes you have to put guys on board that are going to be on board with your vision. And I don't know if they didn't talk to these guys before bringing Kawhi Leonard on and explaining to him, to them rather, this is what we're going to do. This is our mission. This is our focus. Maybe guys were still feeling like, hey, we took the Golden State Warriors to 2 games in the playoffs. We won 48 games last year. Maybe they're still hung up on that. But you guys needed Kawhi Leonard because you couldn't get any farther without Kawhi. So I think regular season, Paul George is fantastic in the regular season. It's the playoffs is the problem. And Paul George is not He tried to be a vocal leader, but everybody tuned him out because we all know he's not. And that's no disrespect to Paul. Everybody can't be that. But the Clippers' problem that's going to continue is the fact that they have no vocal leadership in that locker room. Who is the vocal leader? Kawhi leads by example. So he doesn't say anything. The main reason why that team in Toronto was so successful with Kawhi Leonard, it wasn't just the skill set. They had a vocal leader in that locker room, which was Kyle Lowry. Kyle Lowry was the vocal leader in that locker room. So it balanced out with Kawhi's quietness, but he was loud on the floor when it counted. That's what you need. You go into the Lakers locker room. Who's the vocal leader? LeBron James, along with times Rajon Rondo. You will have AD sometimes speak. You will have Dwight Howard sometimes speak. L. Kuz will sometimes speak. They knew what the chain of command was. You go to Golden State. Who's the vocal leader? Steph Curry. At times, Draymond Green. There at times, Klay Thompson. You know who the chain of command is. Giannis in Milwaukee is the vocal leader in that locker room. But we don't know who the vocal leader is in the Clippers locker room, and that's their Achilles heel. Until you have a chain of command from the players and you bring somebody on that's going to be able to be vocal. This is why I said maybe they need to look at a DeMarcus Cousins in free agency. Maybe they need to look at a Serge Ibaka, not just for what they do on the floor, but how they speak in the locker room to galvanize players. Boogie has done it. Serge Ibaka has done it. So they have experience in doing it. And I think they've all matured, especially Boogie has matured enough to know how to go about doing it in the right format. So maybe the Clippers could look at that option. But I don't expect too much more of the same that we saw last year. I think they make it to the second round unless things drastically change, and that's going to be it for them. Will it be a top 4, top 5 team in the West? Sure, if they stay healthy and everything goes well, absolutely they will, because they're a talented team. But they just don't have enough to get over that hump.
Yeah. Go ahead, Lakina. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. Just, what about the Lakers? Do you think they have a chance, perhaps, maybe start off a dynasty? Or we were just talking about, the other teams in the Western Conference that might pose a problem. What do you think about the Lakers and their chances to repeat next season?
I think they have a good chance to repeat, but I don't think they will. I think because of LeBron's age, and I know people say, "Oh, but look what he's doing." He's playing. Yes, he's playing at a high level, and I give a lot of props to LeBron James. I don't understand where the hate comes from with LeBron James because he is that great of a player. But let's be clear. The man is about to be 36 years of age. And I know 36 is relatively young when we talk about just off the court, regular, everyday human interaction. But when it comes to basketball and the amount of basketball that this man has played, not even counting the playoffs, or if you combine all his playoff appearances, he's played an extra probably 4 seasons on top of what he's already played, right? And had short windows of rest in between those seasons because he's playing till June. He gets out. Now you got to go back to training camp, preseason. October 29th or 30th comes, the start of the season. Now you're back in full mode. So he hasn't really had time. Last season, when the Lakers were gone in April, that was the first time he's had ample time to rest and really get his body back in the right shape. But he's older. And he's dealing with little nagging injuries, the growing injury, little other nagging injuries. So those are going to take a toll on him. And it's going to be a very grueling season next year because now the bullseye is on your back because you are the top dog. Everybody's trying to knock you and your squad off the mountaintop. So you're going to have to, so teams that wouldn't probably play you as hard, they're going to play you even harder just to have bragging rights to get a stripe off of you. Just because they say, hey, man, we beat the world champs. Even if it means it's just the regular season. So you're going to have to, in the playoffs, it's going to get more intense. So I don't know if they have enough. I mean, the Western Conference is going to be tougher. You got a Denver team that continues to remain strong. We don't know what Houston's going to do. We know they're going to change up their philosophy of how they play ball. So there's some factors in it. Dallas could be better, especially if they make some signings this offseason to give Luka some help. I always said Luka needs a goon. So if they can get one of those, that might help them propel themselves into the playoffs. Portland is nothing to sneeze at. I still look at, let's see what OKC has to do. Obviously, Golden State's going to be back in the mix, especially everything is contingent upon what Golden State does. If Golden State ends up flipping that pick and getting rid of Andrew Wiggins and making a move for Giannis, for example, that changes the entire Western Conference playoff picture. If they decide to do that. If they don't, then we'll see what the Warriors do. But regardless, they're still going to be a formidable opponent because you got a very healthy Steph and Clay, along with Draymond and Andrew Wiggins, which is nothing to sneeze at, nothing to sleep on. So the Western Conference is going to be loaded. You look at the East, you know, Giannis is going to be there, obviously, in the regular season. You can't really truly count out Toronto because they're going to make some moves. You know, Masai Ujiri's an incredibly smart basketball mind. He's going to make the moves necessary. You got to look at the Boston Celtics. You know, this was kind of a wacky year. I think if this was a normal year, non-COVID, I think the Boston Celtics may have been going to the NBA Finals this season. They have a lot of talent over there. And then, you know, and then we'll see what happens from there. But there are several teams in the West, man. It's going to be hard for the Lakers to repeat. And I think LeBron stays at 4 by the time he retires.
Yeah, Nick, you made a lot of good points, especially about the Clippers and Doc Rivers. I don't know how much time we have with you. I kind of want to get into this Doc Rivers discussion, but I'll switch it to just another gear. You just touched on it literally a few seconds ago. Do you think personally that and I'm not saying this would have happened, but do you think that we would have seen some different results in the playoffs, especially maybe out east, without the bubble, without the whole COVID-19 shutdown and things like that? Because I was under, and it's still my opinion that a few of these series could have gone different in the East and maybe also in the West if there was a true home court advantage in some of these matchups. So what was sort of your view on how the playoffs played out in the bubble? Do you think there could have been some different results?
It could have been. I mean, we'll never know, obviously, but I mean, it could have been. But I have to say, before I go any further, I have to say, you know, my hat's off to Adam Silver and the NBA for what they were able to do. No positive COVID test while inside the bubble. They were able to crown a champion. Many people didn't know if they were going to be able to finish the season. So they were able to find a place months and months later through a life and death pandemic. This was probably the hardest championship anybody would have won because of the grueling circumstances that they went through. But to answer your question, we don't know. I mean, it could have been different. Obviously, it would have been different because you have that home court, especially with Denver and the Clippers, Lakers and the Rockets. Maybe you would have had a healthier Westbrook. That would have made a difference. I don't know. And then you got the Lakers and the Heat. That might have swung a different way. You know, the Lakers might have swept that series. I don't know. They could have gone 7 games with that series. I don't know. I've always said the Miami Heat are one player away from winning a championship, but I think they're on the right road. I think Eric Spoelstra is an incredible coach. And there were a couple of games where he outcoached Frank Vogel, hands down. Whether they were in a bubble or it was the old normal that we were accustomed to. He's just that good of a coach. But, you know, the champions are who the champions are. There's no asterisk needed. I think it's asinine to say that there needs to be an asterisk. You are an anal cavity if you think that, because you obviously don't understand what it means with these players, every single player, not just the Lakers and the Heat, but every player inside that bubble from the 8-game play-in to the playoffs, what they had to sacrifice, what they had to leave behind. You know, Alex Caruso couldn't even go to his sister's wedding. That's how much he sacrificed. That's his family. You know, you only see your sister. Hopefully your sister only gets married once, and you had to miss out on that because you sacrificed that for the greater good of the team and to get a championship, and it worked out for you. You know, some guys, you know, had to get the lemon wings, and they couldn't help themselves. I mean, you know, that was more important apparently.
Don't start, man.
You know, I mean, I'm just throwing stuff out there. You know, there's a lot of scenarios. I mean, you know, I'm just talking. Don't never mind me. But I think it's just there's a lot of you know what ifs and possible. I mean, think about the Lakers. Obviously, on a mission with the loss of the late great Kobe Bryant. As tragically as him and his young daughter were taken from us. And I say us because Los Angeles has really That's our guy. I know he was born in Philly and raised in Italy and came back, but Kobe's our guy. We watched him grow from 17 on, how he's embraced this city and what he's done for this city in front of the camera and behind the camera. So Kobe is ours. And I know that took a huge toll on a lot of the guys in the Lakers, not just in the staff and Jeannie Buss and Rob Pelinka, but the players too. Anthony Davis being one of them, LeBron James, Rajon Rondo, Dwight Howard. So I think these guys are on a mission regardless, but it didn't make things easier by being locked down in a bubble where you can't get any extracurricular services as you are accustomed to getting during certain times to relieve some stress. You didn't have access to that. You had to stay in that bubble if you wanted to be eligible to play. So I don't know, man. It's interesting. I don't know when the 2021 season is going to start. Some say Christmas, some say sometime in January, maybe mid-January. We know the NHL is going to start January 1st, 2021, according to Gary Bettman, but that could change as well depending on the outbreak of this pandemic, as we're seeing across the nation with college football games being postponed and canceled and NFL facilities being shut down because of COVID-19. So we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, we don't even know if we're going to finish out an NFL season and have a Super Bowl. I mean, NFL came out and said, we're not going to have the Pro Bowl. We're going to have quote unquote activities, whatever the hell that means. So, we don't know what this thing's going to do. So for the NBA to finish their bubble, crown a champion, I think it's remarkable. Shout out to them. Shout out to the WNBA as well for being able to crown a champion and being through their wobble or bubble, whatever you want to call it. And we'll see if baseball is able to crown their champion. Now they're in their quote unquote bubble type of situation. So, it remains to be seen, man. 2020 has been a very rocky year, to say the least.
And Nick, keeping you with the Clipper thing, you mentioned earlier, do you think the Clippers need to maybe make a move other than that Tyronn Lue situation? You think they maybe need to look at moving a Paul George or moving someone else and maybe allowing Kawhi to be gonna lead that team, man, this year?
Well, if you're playing 2K21, sure, that's probably the best bet you're going to have to try to move Paul George, because who in the hell is going to take that damn contract? Nobody in their right mind is going to take that contract. And especially the way that he's been playing in the playoffs, nobody's going to sacrifice or mortgage the farm, as they say, to get a player like Paul George, especially if they're trying to, win and elevate their team. I think you're just stuck with Paul George. And I don't mean stuck in a disrespectful sense, because I like Paul George. I think he's a good brother. I think he's talented. I think he can play. It's just those question marks arise every playoff season. Are you going to show up consistently? He shows up at times, but for a player of his stature that he claims to be, you got to show up night in and night out. Now, Kawhi had a bad game, Game 7. Not taking anything away from Kawhi Leonard in his bad game in Game 7 when the season was on the line. But let's look at Kawhi's history. Kawhi has been instrumental in winning championships. Kawhi has been instrumental in guiding teams. Yeah, he's taking load management, but you know what? I can't blame the dude, because what happened in San Antonio, we don't know the mental effects that happened to him in San Antonio by doctors misdiagnosing you. I mean, if you've ever been misdiagnosed by a doctor, you're skeptical of doctors for a while. It's like getting into a car accident. It takes you a while not to be shook by getting into a car or driving a car after a while. It's the same way with Kawhi Leonard. And I think, that one game should not take away from what he's already accomplished. And I think he's still a great player. I think he's one of the best wing defenders I've ever seen. Is in the game today. And I still think that resonates with him and his game and then throughout the league. So one bad game, yeah, he deserves the criticism that comes with that, but he doesn't deserve to be canceled or written off because of the one bad game. He's still a great player. He just needs help. Now, if the Clippers can somehow, the Jerry West magic wand can wave around and maybe get a Bradley Beal or somebody of that stature, or maybe get a Bradley Beal and a Dwight Howard in free agency, or maybe get a Bradley Beal and a DeMarcus Cousins package going, that could probably pay some dividends, because I think, You know, Ty Lue is a decent coach, but I think Chauncey Billups is the real one that's going to be able to be the glue to that team and that coaching staff. So I thought that was an incredibly smart gesture on Tyronn Lue to hire Chauncey Billups, who already knows the team. He's been covering the team as a play-by-play announcer for the last couple of seasons, so he knows what the team is. He knows the guys. Obviously, they have a great relationship with him, and Chauncey's a really down to earth guy. So I think he's going to be able to speak volumes to the players, maybe reach some players that Tyronn Lue may not be able to reach, and you're going to need that. Same thing we looked at the Lakers with Jason Kidd and Phil Handy. You know, when guys maybe felt like they couldn't talk to Vogel, they talked to Jason Kidd. Jason Kidd will relay stuff. Same thing with Phil Handy. Phil Handy's very respected throughout these NBA circles. So it's great to have a staff where you have guys that may not be able to talk to the head coach all the time, but they can have somebody they can talk to on the coaching staff that can relate to them. So I thought that was an incredibly smart move on the Clippers' part to bring in Chauncey Billups. But unless we see something of that magnitude, again, it's going to be the same old Clippers, man.
Last moment or two with Nick Hamilton of Nitefall Media right here on Second City Sports, along with Lakina McGee, Jason Pfeiffer, and Lamont Scott. I am Sidney Brown. Last question from me, Nick. Listening to one of your radio appearances on Rogan and Rodney a few months back, you talked about how one of the teams, or maybe multiple teams in LA, did not give you proper access to the players. I think it was pre-COVID. I'm not sure it was pre-COVID or right after COVID, but following you on social media, you talked about how we as Americans, we as a society need to support Black media in particular, especially in the times that we are living right now. Talk to our audience about how important is it for everybody to support Black media and different voices in particular, and not just traditional sports media?
No, I think that's an excellent question. I was saying that not just specifically speaking on my situations, but coming in contact with a lot of fellow colleagues of mine, friends of mine that are also in the business that have suffered at the hands of discrimination when it comes to Black media outlets and Black-owned media outlets, to be specific. You know, we don't always get the respect and the opportunities that we've earned, that we've worked for. If, for example, Sydney, let's say you worked for, you know, the LA Times, or you worked for, you know, the New York Times, or, you know, Sports Illustrated, you would be granted access because of your affiliation. You could be a piss poor writer, or you could be the greatest writer since sliced bread. They don't necessarily look at that per se. They look at the outlet first, then they look at the actual individual. When it comes to Black-owned media outlets, they look at the media outlet, and then they want to put all these sticklers and parameters around you, and you have to go the extra mile to prove yourself, which I have no problem proving myself, earning my way to getting the opportunities to be able to cover these teams or cover, you know, entertainment events or what have you. But don't discriminate because you looking at my outlet because you don't think my outlet is big. You don't know what the hell my outlet or other people's outlets, how diverse they are. You just numbers. I mean, and that's another thing we as Black media members have to be cognizant of, is asking the right questions. Okay, why am I not being allowed into your establishment or organization? What is preventing me from you allowing me an opportunity or access to come into these events? Oh, you say it's my numbers. Okay, can you show me something in writing where it says I have to have so many numbers on social media as well as my website, attracting so many visitors per month or what have you? Can you show me something in writing? 8.5 times out of 10, they can't because they have no number. That's just a stipulation they try to throw out at you. And some people will bite on it, some won't. I'm not biting on it. I want to see proof of what your stipulations are. I don't have a problem earning my way to getting to that problem. And that's another thing I've even spoken to other Black media members about that have Black-owned media outlets. And look, man, you got to put in the work. Yeah, it seems like, oh man, why do we have to jump through these hoops? Hell, Black people in general in this country have been jumping through hoops for centuries. So this ain't nothing new. Does it suck? Yes. Is it unfair? Absolutely. But a wise man once told me fair is a place where they judge pigs. So You either going to do the work and get on the grind and then open up opportunities for you. So now you have a stronger case. If you spent a season, I mean, I'll tell you a quick story. When I in LA, there was no NFL football, right? NFL football left when I was pretty much a teenager, on the brink of being a teenager, which was 94. So we lost two teams. We lost the Rams, we lost the Raiders. We had no NFL football. USC football was our pro team. I used to be the running joke in LA. They just play on Saturdays. That was the running joke. And that's why USC was even more popular, not just nationwide when they were winning, but in LA, because we had no other football to turn to. Once we started getting measures back into, sniffing around to getting football back, I was at an event. The San Diego Chargers at that time came up to this particular event. I met with the PR individual, who I thought was a great guy. Never would take anything away from him. And I interviewed the head coach who they had just hired that year. Turned in my information, went back and forth with him. He would not allow me access to anything. Yet I still wrote as if I was there. I still kept abreast of what's going on. Drove, and then finally he let me into practices. I think I took 4 practices that year. I drove from LA to San Diego to LA. Eventually it moved on to getting preseason stuff, OTAs, things of that nature. Mind you, I was still covering the Houston Texans because that was my very first NFL team. I would fly down there 2 times a year to cover games, and I would go to a training camp while I was down there. Stopped covering the Texans, focus more on the Chargers. Eventually end up covering 7 out of 8 home games. And I'm driving back and forth on my own dime. Back and forth. 2 hours one way, 3 hours the next way, because on Sunday it's hell in a handbasket when it comes to LA traffic. And I told people this is why so when they moved to Los Angeles, it wasn't that drastic of a deal because I already had built up equity covering that franchise. So now my case is stronger because I can say, well, look, man, I was covering y'all when y'all was in San Diego. And I had to fight for that. And I thank God I won. I say that to say sometimes you got to go the extra mile to get what you want. You can complain all you want to. You can voice your opinion, but pick your battles wisely. And that's all I was saying, is that you have to pick your battles wisely. But at the same time, we are important. We matter. We have a voice that we speak to that middle America can't always speak to. We are covering these athletes who are superstars now, but a lot of Black media was covering them while they were in college, some in high school before they made it big, and now they get to the pro level, and all of a sudden they want to bridge that divide away from us because they're scared that we're coming up with some secret meetings or whatever it may be. The superiority starts to kick in, and even I have to deal with PR people. And I have to remind some of these players, look, that person works for you. You don't work for them, because some of these white PR people will sit up there and segregate you away from their quote unquote clients. And I'm not saying every white PR person like that, because there's some great white PR people that have helped me, that have looked out for me. There are some Black PR people that have helped me. There's some Latino, straight, gay, whoever. There's good and bad in all of it. But you have to make sure that you have a strong case, and we matter. We have a voice. We deserve the opportunities that we earn. And until you start recognizing us as equals, as far as, hey, we're just as good as a Sports Illustrated. We're just as good as an LA Times, if not better. We're just as good as an ESPN. But it also starts with us to have that mindset. When I came into this business, my mindset was not to compete with the smaller websites. That's easy. My mindset was to take my company to, okay, what is ESPN and Fox and Yahoo and, the Grio and, Shadow League and all these other great, news outlets. What are they doing that's making them so successful? That's what I looked at. And that's what I looked at from day one. So we got to start making sure that we have that mindset so we can put ourselves in contention for those opportunities. But we are just as important as anybody else. And we have to fight twice as hard to get the same opportunities as everybody else. And that's wrong. but we have to keep fighting and force the issue, because if we give up the fight and we don't force the issue, we won't have a voice, because they're trying to marginalize us every year that they can to get rid of us, because the whole goal is to try to get rid of not only the Black voice, I believe, but also the small or the up and coming outlet when it comes to providing coverage. And our stories are different. Our stories are just different. That some of them are the same, but some of them are different. And I'm sure some of you, even on this show, you come in contact with players and you see how different certain players treat you when they see another person that looks like them versus the people that they're always accustomed to. That means something. So we need to make sure that we all band together and stop. Yeah, we all have individual goals, and that's fine. But in order for our voices to remain strong and relevant, we've got to put our own egotistical issues to the side and start banding together, and have you guys having, me on shows like this and other shows. We have to start supporting one another, even if it's something simple as a retweet or a like or a reshare of something. We have to start supporting each other. We have to start putting up a united front. And then the Black folks that are in charge, like NABJ, who I think does a great job, we got to start putting even more pressure on them to say, hey, we're not getting access to these events or these teams. We need your help. What are you going to do? And if they don't do anything, then it becomes us. Okay, well, if they form an organization like that, then maybe we should form our own organization. And I'm not knocking NABJ, because again, I think they do a great job. I think, Dorothy, the president, I think she's made some significant strides with NABJ, and I applaud her as well. But I'm just saying, as an example, hey man, we got to start putting pressure on those who have these platforms. And also too, some of our own Black colleagues that are with, the Yahoos and the Sports Illustrators. Hey man, can you retweet this? Can you look out? Can you, come on my platform? Can you, help me out here? Because people don't realize you guys get a Chris Haynes on here. You know how big that is, because he's going to retweet it, he's going to talk about it, and you guys are going to talk about it, right? Or you get a Mark Spears from ESPN, who I think is another great guy. Mark Spears is a down-to-earth dude. You get a Mark Spears on here. That's major. A guy that's in charge of the Undefeated, who I think they've done a great job, trying to tell our stories and give some insight to what's going on. So there's several others. You look at a Kerry Champion, you look at a Jamel Hill, you look at, so many countless others. You get those people on board, but hey man, we shouldn't have to pull teeth to get our own people on our platforms.
Well said, Nick. You can follow him at Nick Hamilton LA on Twitter, and I looked through your Nitefall Media outlet and all your various platforms. You guys do a great job there. So all of you guys, check it out. It's a great site. All great content, and you guys do an amazing job, Nick. And thank you so much for joining us. We gotta do this again. This is some great stuff.
And you know what? First and foremost, thank you guys for having me on. Lakina, Lamont, Jason, Sydney, thank you guys for having me on as well. I really greatly appreciate the opportunity. Again, I apologize for being late. I know I stereotypical. I don't like doing that, but I thank you guys, and I like this. I've been very fortunate to have a great team that does a great job to keep the outlet going. That's not just me by myself. Whether it's my production crew. The hosts that are on with various shows that we produce through the outlet. Credit goes out to them. The folks that write some of the pieces or contribute to some of the pieces. Credit goes out to them. So I think it's just a valid team effort, much like you all have a great team here. I think that's important. So, thank you again so much for having me on. And we're also in the process of revamping the website. So hopefully in the next couple of months, by the time you guys tune in on it, it'll be where I envision it to be.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much, Nick.
Thank you. You guys have a great day now.
You too. You guys stay safe. All right. That was Nick Hamilton. from Nitefall Media at Nick Hamilton LA on the Twitter, and at Nitefall Media at NITE Fall Media. That's how you spell it. So check it out on our various social media platforms. So do you guys want to take a break, or do you want to keep going? Because I think we know we're a little pressed for time, so we're a little long with Nick. So do you guys just want to keep going?
Let's take a quick timeout. Quick 20-second timeout, and then we'll come back, do our NFL picks, college football, and we'll have a little bit more fun. You're listening to Second City Sports Weekend Edition.
Zoom style.
Zoom style.
Welcome back to our second segment of the Weekend Edition of Second City Sports Zoom style.
Zoom style.
Along with Lakina McGee and Jason Pfeiffer and Lamont Scott, I am Sidney Brown. You can follow yours truly on Twitter and the Instagram at SidKid80. Once again, at SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
Lamont?
And you can follow me at Lamont Scott on Facebook, Lamont Scott 69 on Instagram, and Lamont Scott 16 on Twitter.
You can follow me at Keena McGee on Twitter and at Keena_McGee on the Instagram.
You can follow me at Truth and Reason _ on the Twitter, and you can follow the show's Twitter handle at 2NDCSCHI.
And you can follow this show or Warrant or Anchor, which kicks you over to Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, Stitcher, wherever you download your podcast. Make sure you search for War on Anchor. And we're also on iHeartRadio. Just download the iHeartRadio app, type in that search engine box, War on Anchor, that's WARR on Anchor. And also we are on YouTube at War Media, that's WARR Media. You can see our lovely faces like you're watching right now. Voila, there we are. Before we get to our NFL picks, quickly, just for a couple of seconds, we'd like to thank Nick Hamilton of Nitefall Media out there in Los Angeles. As Lakina mentioned in our last segment, you can follow him on Twitter and Instagram at Nick Hamilton LA. That's once again at Nick Hamilton LA. I also want to give a shout out to It's the Bigs. That's Terrence Tomlin and Eugene McIntosh, both friends of the show. Of course, I think it was actually a year ago that we had Eugene had to go away for an event, but we had Terrence Tomlin in studio. Of course, they're based here out of Chicago. I just want to give those two guys a big shout out. They will be back on this show very soon, and they can tell you stories of how they had to go jump through hoops to cover these teams as an independent outlet here in Chicago. Of course, they're the only Black independent outlet in Chicago with access to the Chicago Bulls, Chicago Bears, Cubs, and White Sox. So I want to shout out those guys as well. We will bring them back on the show again in the future. We haven't forgotten about you guys. Thinking about it, should have brought them on all together for one big forum. Maybe we could do that sometime down the road. I just want to give those guys their props and their shout out. They're friends of this program and of the Dean Davis Show as well. So they have a lot of stories to tell as well, along with Nick.
Yeah, well, we probably got, like you said, so we probably got to get them out and do like a forum style, with this kind of thing at some point, because they shared some stories with us too. But, on that note, let's get to the business at hand here. Carolina, they're 3-2. They've won 3 in a row. This team's actually a lot better than people thought. The Bears will have kind of their work cut out for them this week. They've had their issues too, the Bears. They had like one of their practice squad guys test positive, but it looks like that was an isolated incident. So everybody else has come back negative. So where do you guys see in this game real quick before we do our picks?